I think it's really important and one that we're going to be having many more of in the future. I'm also happy to know that yesterday in our US elections, we had some of the highest voter turnout of a midterm, so maybe we're moving in the right direction in terms of engagement. Well, we're going to switch tracks now to education. India's only edtech unicorn has grand plans for global domination. They were one of the first investments of the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative and are now looking to go beyond the borders of the world's second most populated country. But how can education keep up with a changing job market? So we've got Lindsay Turrentine from CNET talking to founder and CEO of BYJU'S learning app, BYJU Ravindram. Let's give them a round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I'll start with a short video which will give you some idea about what we used to do before. Can you play video 1?
If I start with a circle, and if I keep on adding circles inside, the last one being just a point, so you're looking at 5 circles here. What is important is, now if I just write 2 simple terms here, cut the diagram, and open the diagram like this, using, let's say, a radius, you can convert like circle to something like this.
Pause the video.
Open the circle.
Yeah, so just to give you an idea, this is probably the biggest math sessions anywhere in the world. 25,000 students sitting together and learning in the largest indoor stadium in New Delhi. Now, it shows 2 sides of the story. One is, and I used to stand in the middle of a 6-sided screen and used to do sessions like this all over India. Did this as recently as 3 years back. On one side of it, extreme aspiration levels of students in countries like ours, where education is still the only way to make it big for most of us. And on the other side, all the challenges which our education system has in terms of India is the largest K-12 system in the world. There are 270 million students in schools. Good teachers are hard to find, and we rank very low in most of the global education rankings. So over the next 4-5 minutes, since I can't give you an example of this is what we do, like this is similar to the Netflix or the X or A or this, that's why I'm just spending 4-5 minutes and giving you an idea on what we are doing today and how we are addressing this big challenge and which can work in most of the developing markets. So to begin with, I'll dramatize the story by telling that I come from a small village, which is a fact, but contrary to what people think, it's a huge advantage. That's what makes us extremely positive, highly aspirational. I didn't even know what people take for granted. I didn't even have a good school to go to. Forget about in school, I didn't even have teachers in the school. So that kind of forced me to become a self-learner. I was passionate about math, so I learned math completely on my own. The average English which I speak here is something which I learned very contextually by listening to sports commentaries on radio. So you can excuse me if you are struggling to follow what I'm doing here, and I'm also doing it fast with my heavy Indian accent. But fast forward the story, I pursued my interest in math, ended up becoming an engineer by chance, a teacher by choice, which made me an entrepreneur by chance. So how that happened, my first session was for 35 students. My 6th session was for 1,200 students, and went on to start doing sessions in stadiums like that for 25,000 students. Did that for initial years, completely non-interactive. And if you're teaching math to a 13, 14, 15-year-old like that, you have to take that to the level of almost like a math concert. Math sessions don't work because people don't like math, generally. So after that, the core challenges in the system, right? We shifted focus to creating a school learning product with a clear focus on solving all the core challenges. What are the core challenges? Like, I'm sure most of you will relate to it. Good teachers are hard to find. Personalization is impossible even in a classroom of 20, but we have very suboptimal teacher-student ratio in markets like ours. And the third one is format of learning which people use, which is learning driven by fear of exams and not love for learning. People still completely memorize even most logical subjects like math. Just to give you an idea on how people learn back in India, back in countries like ours, it's just even a math, they learn like a poem. Next 20 seconds, what I'm doing here is not to teach you anything, but this is how, unfortunately, a lot of students learn. Math will sound like this. Arithmetic progression is AP, is A plus D, A plus D, A plus N minus, which is nth term, something n to the first term, m double 2, 3 corners in A plus M minus D, A plus D. For you say M minus D, A minus D, A plus D, A plus C, D. If you add it all, you can find out D. Geometric progression point numbers through will sound like this. AR square, AR is to n minus 1, which is nth term, sum to n to m, so A into R is to n minus by R minus 1, or A into 1 minus R is to n minus 1, R is less than or greater than 1. 3 constant GP clear is A by R, AR, sorry, A by R cube, A by R, AR cube multiply, R, so find out R. This is how people learn math. Now, that's the biggest challenge. Students and the learning for the future cannot be based on this. Now, why it's important is, in countries like ours, where it's young population, large population markets, right? Almost all of them, whether it's India, Indonesia, Nigeria, where average age of the population is under 30, there are every year 30 million kids, let's say in first grade in India, 30 million. So it's, people talk about reaping the benefits of demographic dividend, but unless and until we make sure that they get access to good quality education, then the only way we can solve all the education infrastructure problems in market like ours is by using technology as an enabler. Technology as a strong enabler, it's still education first, content first strategy. Technology and media can be used as strong enablers to make sure that we create content in a format which students like, offered through devices which they are friendly with. We took 4 years before we launched an application in 2015 August. A learning app for school kids, 9 to 17, a self-learning app. We got a good response. Just to give you on what we did in that, I'll play a second video of 25-30 seconds. You will get an idea about how we have made learning engaging and interactive. Video 2.
Take a square, take A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. Now join the 4 points. Unshaded region is C square here. Now in the same diagram, if I push this up and bring these two together, if I push this to the right and bring this down, unshaded region A square plus B square equal to C square here.
So now what we're going to do is that we're going to take the string of the guitar, visualize the air parallelly with the slinky as it compresses and gets pulled back, and see both as a graph and watch what we observe. So the string of the guitar moves upwards, compresses air, that's equal to somebody pushing the slinky, pushing it that way, and that's equal to somebody creating a pressure up in the air, and that's going to be represented with a little peak in the graph, as you can see. So the string to move forward again, so one more compression, one more up. So you will let this run through time, and that's what you will observe.
Okay. Now, like anything else, for education to be effective, it needs to be entertaining. Otherwise, you will never get engagement from today's kids. So we launched the application just 3 years back. We got a good start. More than 25 million students are learning from the application. Probably the largest school learning app anywhere in the world. But the most important number here, every month we are adding 2 million users onto the platform. But the most important numbers are the ones which you see in the second line. Students spend more than an hour on the app, 64 minutes on the application every day. That's maybe it's only next to Netflix. And there is no force here. That clearly shows that students are liking it. And on the other side, the long-term effectiveness can be seen from the last number. 85% of the students continuing from one academic year to the next academic year is a clear validation that there is effectiveness and they're also improving. Otherwise, they won't continue on the app. So now, these are relatively good numbers. I'll still call it relative success because Though we might be known as the largest edtech company in India, most valuable edtech startup in the world today, but the fact is we are not even reaching out to 10% of the students even in India. So there is a long way to go before we call it a revolution. But the best part about the segment is this is one segment where doing well is equivalent of doing good. And the real fun is not in creating a billion-dollar company, but in changing the way millions think and learn. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. We have time for me to ask a couple of questions because I'm really interested in this topic. And I'd love to hear just a little bit about how students find your app really fast. How do they get involved in the first place?
So mostly the initiation is, so we have created a product with a clear student-centric strategy. So we are not doing it through schools or to schools, directly to students, in the B2C segment. While creating the product, we made sure that it's in a format which they like. It's movie-like videos and game-like interactions. So there is a lot of word-of-mouth publicity, that's every day more than 60,000 students download the application, and that's how they discover.
That's exciting. So you have 25 million users right now, and now you're ready to talk about next steps. Where are you going next?
So what we have seen over the last 3 years is that younger kids, for them, learning from a screen, spending time on a screen is almost becoming a primary habit, where what is required is students who take initiative in learning on their own. Though I did that, and that was a blessing in disguise for me. I didn't have any other option. When students take the initiative in learning, teachers are important, schools will be important, but the ideal learning for the future is where teachers play a role of a mentor. Students learn because they want to learn and pursue things which they like, subjects which they like, and that's how they can be ready for the future. Now, talking about future, it's not like before where we finish graduation and we end up doing the same job for the next 25, 30 years. Today, every 3, 4, 5 years, unless and until we are ready to do reskilling and upskilling, so we need to create continuous learners, self-learners, lifelong learners, if you want them to be ready for the jobs of tomorrow, which most of them are not even defined. A student enrolling to school today, after graduation, most of the reports say that half the jobs which they will get into, they are not even defined today. So the passive learning which happens in our systems all around the world, which is one-way transmission from teachers to 25, 30, 40 students, that has to change. And the students spending time on the application, most of them are moving from passive learners to active learners.
You have a lot of these active learners on your platform in India. Are you expanding?
So now we are creating a product for a global product in collaboration with Disney, which will get launched for age group 5 to 10, and that will be first launched in all the English-speaking markets.
That's very exciting.
For the next 3-4 months.
And so how do you expect to be able to reach students outside of the market you've established? What are your plans, and who's partnering with you?
So on the content side, we are using the most popular Disney IP over there, but different markets will go with different partners, and some of them can be telecom partners, some of them will be distribution partners.
That's exciting. If you hope that your app does anything for students in this younger age group, what is your hope for those kids?
Like next generation, I have a lot more hope, because if you look at how fast they learn by using all the visual and contextual methods available online, access is it's almost making it a level playing field. Even in small villages back in India, today they are able to learn English or any subject well before they even start schools. So we only need to create a generation who's hungry to learn. So maybe we need the behavioral change in some parts of the world, so that education or learning is mostly self-driven and not passive.
How do you keep kids? So I have kids who spend a lot of time watching videos, and they do learn a lot that way. Sometimes I get worried that they're not reading enough. How do you keep kids trying lots of different formats once they get really hooked into the excitement of learning online?
Yeah, I think it's not about learning online. It's about online or technology gives us access to a lot more formats than just textual format. Now, reading from a book is important, or learning from a teacher is important, but the power of videos, as all of us realize, it's helping a teacher, like the videos which I've seen, that's something which even best of the teachers can never do in a classroom. So this is supplementary to what's happening in the system today, but will create the interest in the student, and when students start liking the subjects which they are good at, nothing will stop them.
What do you think is the next format beyond an app-based learning environment? Do you think that there's something in the near future or even the distant future that will light fire?
I think over the next 4 or 5 years, we will see that, because learning at the end of the day is a core offline activity. The future of learning will also depend on a lot of offline stuff, what's happening. Connecting back to like online, and a hybrid version is what will be the learning for the future. Like whether it will be like for that, like which format will become mainstream, because at the end of the day today, it's learning, though we mentioned a learning app, it's learning through an app. We use smartphones because that's the most efficient, the cost-effective way of reaching out or to solve the problem of access. Even in India, 70% of the students have access to a smartphone. So if for anything to really make an impact at the grassroots level, that should become mainstream. So like it's anybody's guess which format will become mainstream, and unless and until you create content in that format, you'll be left behind.
This is probably my last question. This is so interesting. Kids are the ones really driving adoption of this type of learning, and you've had great success. How do you get kids to teach their parents what they need to continue learning in this way? How do you get them to share what they want?
I think when it comes to learning, once kids spend enough time on the phone instead of watching a movie or playing a game, even if they just mention to parents that this is what I do, or if they observe that they are learning from a screen, parents are very happy to support or pay for it. So it's not like anything else. It's a refreshingly or a surprising change. Instead of asking for a video game or a movie, they're asking for a learning product, and because it's created in a format which they like.
Are they talking to each other about it? Are kids telling each other, I'm using this, it's helping me?
That's how the adoption is happening at this pace, because a lot of kids are talking about it, and once it becomes, it's still a new segment. That's a challenge. Kids are not used to learning from a screen when they are 10 or 15. So that's been the challenge in the initial years, but today we have reached a stage where every month 2 million new users are coming onto the platform.
What is the first thing that they do when they get onto the platform? Or is there a class or a topic that they're pursuing first usually?
So generally they follow what's happening in school, and synchronous with what's happening in school. So it's not a completely unfamiliar format for them. It's almost like a new age textbooks where concepts or subjects come to life. So they are comfortable starting with what's happening in school, parallel to or in synchronous with the classroom lessons.
And do you ever learn from kids about something new or see an area of interest crop up that you're adding content for and you didn't expect it?
So we're continuously adding new formats of content, which is more interactive in nature rather than just passive video watching. So every 3-4 minutes, students interact with the screen, and that input is important for us to personalize this based on pace of learning, size of learning, style of learning, or more time they spend on the app. We are able to figure out what they learn, when they learn, how much they learn, how fast they learn. And there is a lot of scope to personalize the way students learn. And technology is just about making its intervention in such an important segment called learning, which can literally change. Like students might be 20% of the population in most of the countries, but they are 100% of the future.
Great. This has
and
been...
I would just want, so 21st century illiterates are not the ones who can't read and write. They are the ones who can't learn, relearn, learn, unlearn, and relearn.
It's really inspirational. Thank you for all of your work. Thank you, Viju.
Thanks a lot.